Welcome to Chess 24, everyone, and welcome to another installment of Game of the Day. Round 8 took place, and it was an important round for the tournament, and of course I'm referring to Norway Chess, the first of 3 mega tournaments this year comprising of the Grand Chess Tour. It was an important round because the big question on everybody's lips was, well, can anybody stop Vasilij Topalov? After all draws in round 7, it meant that he was a point and a half clear of the field, and with 2 games to go, clear favourite to win the tournament. Could anybody actually halt the Topper train? And he had a difficult task in front of him, playing black against Anish Giri. We're going to have a quick look at what happened there, but the game I'm actually going to concentrate on in a bit more detail for my game of the day today is the game between Viswanathan Anand and Jon Ludvig Hammer. It's an interesting game where the opening is curious because actually it seems as though everybody is playing the same way against Jon Ludvig. Clearly they feel like this is a weakness he has. And I thought I'd share it with you. So let's see what happened in Anand Hammer. C4, E5. So the English opening with a standard fianchetto and an early D5. And what we actually arrive at after knight C3 and knight B6, here white traditionally plays D3. E3 is a move. Actually, I believe Hikaru Nakamura once played this with the idea of going knight G2, castles, and F4 at the London Chess Classic some years ago. But D3, bishop E7, and now bishop E3. You should note that Jon Ludvig already had this position with black against Alexander Grishchuk earlier in the competition, where Grishchuk played the outlandish knight H3 to then be met by the move G5, where this pawn ostensibly controls this knight, only for Grishchuk then to repeat back to G1. Very curious way of playing. Grishchuk ended up winning that one. So it seems as though people are really picking on Jon Ludvig in this particular system. But Vishy went for the more classical bishop E3, castles, and rook C1. So he's developing his queenside first because he wants to see how black sets up. Will black set up more solidly with F6, a bit more conservatively, or will he play F5? And actually that's exactly what Jon Ludvig did. And actually after knight F3 and knight C6, we reach a reversed Sicilian dragon classical variation, where especially here after, castles, Larsen Miralles actually went queen B3 check here, although not entirely convinced by that move. I like castles. And now bishop E6. We do reach a mainline reversed Sicilian dragon. So it must be useful to have an extra tempo here. And Anand makes great use of this extra tempo. And we'll see that in a minute. I should point out, though, that the move F4 in this position has been played. But after bishop D2, the big question is whether this F4 move in this particular position has actually helped black, because white now has a fantastic outpost for his knight on at E4, and it's debatable as to whether black can actually get anything going on the king side with G5. It's all a bit ostentatious, and I don't think Jon Ludvig believed he could play like this against Anand. Maybe against a weaker player he would, but not against Anand. So he went more classically with bishop E6, and now Anand came up with the brilliant move B4. Well, clearly the point of this move is to be able to play B5 and win the C5 pawn. And so black has to do something, and the question is, can he actually take this guy? The answer is probably no, because let's analyze it. Let's see. Well, knight takes b4, knight takes e5. Yes, the material is equal, but white has won a central pawn for a flank pawn. On top of that, black does lose a whole lot of control in this position. He has a lot of weaknesses, and clearly this is a very favourable pawn exchange for white. So can he take with the bishop? Well, this runs into a nice little move, knight to g5, just hitting this e6 bishop. And the problem is, if bishop d7, that now runs it to queen b3 check. And if king h8, actually white wins a piece with bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6, queen takes b4. So after knight g5, actually already black is running into a lot of tricks. He might have to go queen f6, but even here after takes, and now bishop takes b6, we see another problem with the position. Because after a takes b6, bishop d5, whoops, and you lose your queen. So it seems as though the pawn is immune, which is why Hammer played a6. White now played a3. He's going to have to play this move eventually, especially after king h8, because there are no longer tricks along the long diagonal. And he plays more standard now. He plays knight a4, takes, and bishop d5. This has all been seen, these kind of ideas have been seen many times before. I should point out that after knight a4, the idea is that not only are you threatening to go knight takes b6, but sometimes you can go knight c5. So you should take this off. Takes, bishop d5, bishop c5, and bishop d6. And actually, on the face of things, it looks as though Jon Ludvig's played pretty well till now and is holding his own. Rishi retreated with the queen, queen f6, and the point of queen c2 was to be able to play this move e4. With the idea that after bishop e6, I don't think it is beneficial for black to play like this, because even though he opens the f file, you know, he can be left with a backward pawn in some lines, but also if white decides just not to take this, then this pawn on e5 as well can feel a bit weak. Maybe a move like queen c3 here, or I'm not quite sure exactly what Rishi had in mind, but certainly instinctively, it's definitely an option. But I think this was an important moment actually, because after bishop e6, then the structure changes radically, and we reach a position like this where white's given himself an isolated d pawn, but what he has got once again is fantastic home for a piece, either a knight or bishop on e4. And actually, I believe Jon Ludvig felt he was better at some moment in this game, so perhaps Anand's play wasn't optimal around here. After a5, trying to now weaken this queenside structure, b5, knight e7, bishop g5 came, queen f7, and now queen c3, protecting this pawn and hitting this guy. Here already, I don't think I like Hammer's next move that much. I think he should have probably played a move like knight g6, but then after knight d2, not only is white threatening this guy, but the knight's coming to e4 with a pleasant advantage. And if knight d5, I think this does run into knight takes e5, and I think the tactics work. Takes, and takes, and white has managed to emerge a pawn up and protect both of these pawns. So, not clear, in my opinion. So, Jon Ludvig felt like things started to slip away, really, around here after h6. Because now after takes, queen takes, knight h4. This is an excellent move where white's, it's a double attack, and the bishop can't retreat to c8 because of knight g6 check. And if the bishop retreats to h7, then perhaps after a4, rook a b8, bishop e4, this was Anand's genius idea, is that he wants complete domination of the light squares. And after, I don't know, for example, takes, king h7, knight f5, this knight is just a monster. And with the light squared weaknesses, this is the kind of position actually the likes of Anand, Carlsen would pay to have every day. And yeah, white must be quite some bit better here. So instead, Jon Ludvig decided to take the material with bishop takes a3. But after the forcing line, bishop takes b7. Now bishop takes c1. Knight takes f5, hitting the queen. Rook takes f5, only move. And bishop takes a8. The dust has cleared. And we have a position with opposite colored bishops. But the problem is that white maintains some pressure because he's attacking the bishop and he wins the pawn on a5. If black could keep this pawn, because it is a passed pawn and the bishop does help it queen, it's on the right colour square, then he would have something. But after bishop a3, queen takes a5, bishop c5, bishop comes back to e4. Now there are checks down the back, so Jon Ludvig came back. And after king g2, this bishop is just an untouchable piece. And despite the opposite colours of the bishops, white is a pawn up. The black king is permanently weak because he's got the move h6 in and would rather have the g6 h7 formation. And Jon Ludvig, well, he collapsed pretty quickly from here. Queen d6, h4, that's a nice move. Now he wants to get in h5, so Jon Ludvig played h5, but now he puts his own pawn on a light square which can be attacked. Queen d2 with the idea of queen g5, queen f6, queen e2 hitting the pawn, g6. Whoops, bishop takes g6. That was the last mistake. You could argue queen f7 here, but after f3, the idea of this is to then be able to activate the rook via other channels. Still some play to be had, but I'm pretty convinced that Vishy would be close to winning. Maybe he's going to go rook c1 to c6, try and play f4, win this. And there are all kinds of ideas in the position. It's very unpleasant for black already. But after g6, bishop takes g6 was a nice shot. Queen takes g6, queen takes e5 check, and queen takes c5. And already 2 pawns down. I should say 3 pawns down. Queen takes d3 as well. Queen g5 check would net another pawn with check, and it's just all over at this level. Black would have no hope. So a great win for Vishy, who shows that he's having one of his best tournaments of the year, and he's got a chance now in round 9 to play Veselin Topalov. The question is, could he actually play Veselin and win the tournament? Well, he could, because Veselin Topalov lost for the first time in the tournament against a rather tricky Anish Giri, who managed to, out of what looked like a nothing opening, squeeze Veselin. And it was around the time control where we got this position. And after the move king h7, well, actually, if Anish had repeated with knight f7, we would have had a threefold repetition on the board. But he found the cute idea knight to f3. So let's just take stock. It's 3 pawns each. But black's pieces are all kind of over the place, and there are weaknesses everywhere. Knight f3 was a great move because now he threatens knight g5 check to then win the pawn. The problem with rook takes b5 straight away in this position is that after a move like bishop d2 or even bishop d6, all Rick endings, all endings like this are just completely, well, maybe not this one. I'm very capable of messing this particular one up. But even this wouldn't surprise me if it was a draw. So knight f3 was a great move. And actually, after rook f5, knight g5 check, king h6, Anish had to be precise once again. The problem with knight takes e6, which is the move I think many of us would play, is that after rook f6, yes, you can win another pawn, but whoops, rook g6 check, and you end up losing the game. And knight c7, rook takes f4, well, here, again, even though white's a pawn up, it's going to be very difficult to convert. So king f3 was good, bishop to d2, e3, keeping things solid, and b4. So black decides he's going to keep at least 1 pawn. But after knight takes e6, white has won a pawn. And black's king is also quite perilously placed. It's not in in a shielded position here. So it's going to run into a lot of checks and a lot of tricks. Rook h5. He took on g7. Rook takes h2. Gave a check. King g6 gave another check. And gave one more check. And actually, after king e4, there was no way of stopping the white march. And he's very cleverly maneuvered his king round and won the b pawn. And after king d6, king d4, well, this is just too easy. With 2 pawns and a knight, followed by, you know, the rook. Everything's coordinated for white. Veselin threw in the towel, which means that in round 9, we have Veselin Topalov with white with a half-point advantage over Vishy Anand. If Vishy wins, he wins the tournament outright. And of course, anything but a win for Vishy means that Veselin will win the tournament outright. So that's going to be certainly the focus of the tournament. And I should also point out that our world champion, Mr. Magnus Carlsen, also had a mini comeback in his game against Levon Aronian. I say mini comeback, more like damage limitation. Although the second half of the tournament has been much kinder to Magnus, he was struggling previously. I think the important position, I've just showed the end position there. The position that I'd like to show you is this position after knight f4. Amazingly, Magnus had slowly but surely, as we've seen him do time and time again, improve a small advantage in the position where it looked as though Lev was doing okay. And here, unbelievably, white, who's pinning this rook, didn't play the move knight h4. Clearly, Magnus was concerned about the move queen takes f2. But after rook g3, there's really nothing to be done here for black. There are no checks. There is no strange knight move that puts the position at peril. And yeah, it was odd to see Carlsen not play this move. Instead, he played rook to c2, which was a mistake. And here, if I remember correctly on the clocks, Magnus had about a minute left for 4 or 5 moves, and Levon had about 15 minutes. And I was extremely surprised here, because rook c2 is an awful blunder. And black has one of 2 moves where he can actually even at least be equal or even be better. The move queen b4 seems to equalize immediately. But the move queen b8, which is actually a fairly logical move, you put the queen on the long diagonal attacking this king, this would actually pose some serious problems to white. For example, if the move g4, trying to win a rook, now you've got the move knight to g6. And you're threatening all kinds of nasty discovered checks with this rook. And if g takes e5, the amazing move e takes f5. I think this is the move that Levon missed. That you can just take this pawn back. So you temporarily sacrifice a rook, but your next move is going to be delivering this absolutely nasty discovered check. So a move like queen e8 would be met by rook d8 check, and you would win the queen. And I think the point is that most people instinctively would look at the move rook d4 check here. But after knight e5 takes, you've got this intermediate check on g6. Maybe this is what Levon saw. And of course, after takes, white is just winning. But if you see e takes f5, queen takes f5 is the only move, but then rook f6 check, and well, this is winning. So queen b8 would have really been a fantastic move to see on the board. Understandable he didn't do that. But the move queen a1, well, this is a very poor move, because now after g4, there are no more tricks. Queen to f1 threatening mate, but now the simple knight e1 covering g2 in various ways. Knight to h5 was tried, but this actually has no threats. Takes, and queen c4, and that's all she wrote. All the white pieces are coordinated, and of course Magnus wins his position a rook up. So yeah, quite an amazing chance there for Lev that he won't often get with black against Magnus. It means that Magnus is back on to -1, and he joins Fabiano Caruana, who drew against Alexander Grischuk. And the other success story of the tournament is, of course, Hikaru Nakamura, who's also up there. But really, the big game, round 9, Anand versus, Topalov with White versus Anand. Make sure you check out all of the action on Chess24. And if you want a bit more of an in-depth look at what happened in round 8, remember to check out the news article from the website. For now, from me, it's goodbye, and I look forward to seeing who wins this fantastic Norway Chess 2015 tournament.